Zimbabwe was freshly liberated from 92 years of oppressive British colonialism. While the British left Zimbabwe, the problems that were left still remained, primarily the huge disparity of wealth between minority white Rhodesians and majority native Zimbabweans. The white minority, which never totaled more than 5%, owned over 70% of the farmable land in Zimbabwe. This encouraged President Robert Mugabe to initiate his peaceful, willing buyer, willing settler land reform policy. However, 17 years later, there was little difference in the amount of land whites owned. It still hovered around 70%. Mugabe soon realized that his peaceful strategy lacked results, and in 2000 he implemented a more aggressive policy. It is this policy that prompted filmmaker Lucy Bailey to create her film Mugabe and the White African. However, in the film, Bailey portrays this policy as in a one-sided manner without providing historical or political context, and in failing to do so, creates a false impression of Mugabe and his policies. This is a violation of the First Amendment and is defined as libel. Members of the jury, Bailey's crime cannot be justified by the assumption that justice is universal, regardless of the circumstances. My fellow attorneys Paul Terrace and Abby Rosenbaum, and I, Claire Kirkpatrick, will prove to you today that Lucy Bailey has committed libel against President Robert Mugabe. The context of Mugabe's land reform policies is essential to understand his actions against Mike Campbell. No mercy was shown to the natives of Zimbabwe, so why should mercy be shown to Mike Campbell's family? Blacks were massively oppressed throughout Campbell's lifetime in South Africa, but Mike was not concerned with universal justice then. In fact, he earned a living as an apartheid officer underneath the unjust regime of apartheid. Universal justice has become a convenient concept for Campbell now that he is threatened. However, universal justice is an idealistic concept. There cannot be a one-size-fits-all application for every unjust situation. The blacks in Zimbabwe clearly deserved, but did not receive universal justice, as victims of the cruel and racist regime of the British. This is the basis of Mugabe's policies as president. The people of Zimbabwe deserve the land that was wrongfully taken from them when the British colonized it. The land simply does not belong to Mike Campbell and his family. With whites such a minority in Zimbabwe, the amount of land they own compared to the blacks is disproportionate. The evidence of libel in Mugabe and the White African is impossible to disregard, starting with the very title of the film. The word Mugabe is in red font, while the White African is in white font. The very color of the title suggests that Mugabe is a hateful man with malintent, while the Africans are pure and innocent. This idea of good versus evil manifests itself throughout the entire film. Campbell and Freeth are pictured getting dressed and interacting with their family to make the audience feel more connected to them, while Mugabe is portrayed as an inhuman dictator. There are also several scenes where Ben Freeth is driving a car, and black men are pictured on the side of the road, giving them the stink eye or looking imposing. There is footage shown of an invaded farmhouse with the white family weeping, yet we see nothing of the decades of hardship blacks faced in Zimbabwe. To surmise, the defendant made a film about Zimbabwe's government's land redistribution without once mentioning why it needed to be redistributed in the first place. One of the witnesses you will hear speak today is Jamaica Kincaid, author of A Small Place. Kincaid has not only witnessed, but lived under the British colonial state, and can relate to the horrors they imposed upon her people. Her testimony will help us understand Mugabe's land reform policy. You will also hear from Bono, lead singer of the band U2. While Bono was a humanitarian, he recognized that the concept of universal justice is not a reality in our complex world, and cannot function or should be expected. The most important witness you will hear speak today is Robert Mugabe himself, and he will defend his reputation as the democratic leader of Zimbabwe and address the dramatized version of himself in the film. My ultimate question to the jury is universal justice a realistic expectation, and does it justify the criminal actions of Lucy Bailey? It is foolish to believe that Mike's nationality and race should not affect the predicament, because in fact, it does. I urge you to realize the reality of this situation. Lucy Bailey has failed to acknowledge the racist policies whites had enforced years before in Zimbabwe, and thus portrayed the conflict over the land reform policy in a biased and inaccurate manner. Her film created a false impression of Robert Mugabe and his policies that is harmful to his reputation, and as a result, Lucy Bailey is guilty of committing libel. Thank you.